I think every writer has a scent. I've often called it, your work are the royal garments, and when you vanish, people will pick your books up, and if people are reading at all, and they will have a sense of smell, and they will be able to catch your scent.
Welcome to the Unspeakable Podcast, the podcast that is this close to being renamed the Unspeakeasy Podcast. In fact, depending on how fast we can get our branding up and running on the various platforms, it already may be named the Unspeakeasy. In any case, I am still your host, Meghan Daum. This is the same podcast. Nothing is changing but the name. But I think since we've moved past the era of unspeakability, for better or for worse, this is a better name. My guest is the fabulous novelist and screenwriter Bruce Wagner. Bruce has had a prolific and eccentric career spanning more than 3 decades. His acclaimed trilogy of novels called the Cell Phone Trilogy, published back in the 90s and early 2000s. Novels like I'm Losing You and I'll Let You Go, back when cell phones were very novel. They are classics of dark Hollywood satire. And he's written several films, including Maps to the Stars. His new novel, written and published with impressive speed, is called Amputation, and it is about the L.A. wildfires. Yes, this is the first L.A. wildfire novel to come around the bend. The characters include fictionalized versions of Stephen Colbert, Debra Winger, and L.A. Mayor Karen Bass, among others. It is funny and weird and dark, and also strangely transcendent, as is this conversation. So here it is, Bruce Wagner. Bruce Wagner, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Megan.
You were here in January 2021 talking about the Marvel Universe. We talked about the controversy around that book, particularly around one of the characters, Fat Joan. We don't need to dip too much back into that, but we should say that you published 2 more books in 2022 and 2024. The Met Gala and Tales of Saints and Seekers, and Roar, American Master, the oral biography of Roger Orr. I cannot keep up with you, but when I saw that you had a new novel out about the LA wildfires, I said, okay, now we really have to talk. I cannot believe you got it out so fast. And as my audience knows, I've been talking about the wildfires, and here it is, Amputation. Yeah. I'm holding up the advanced reader's copy. It's much fancier than this, but where to start? How did you get this done so quickly, and what prompted you?
Well, I had been, in interviews, I've been saying that I was finished writing novels. It's kind of like Spinal Tap, the end continues.
Yes, thank God, in that case.
I had just moved someone that was evacuated from the Palisades into an Airbnb, and I was feeling unwell, and in general, I think I even had a flu, and I was overcome by a kind of rage, which often fuels my work, and I laid in bed, and I must have written this in 6 to 7 weeks. It's just about, I think, the shortest book I've ever written, and that gave me a kind of incentive, that I could see the end, whereas when you write a longer book, you often cannot see the end, and it goes back and forward in time. And some of the major characters are Stephen Colbert, who loses his show in my novel, for reasons other than...
We don't want to give anything away, of course. No spoilers, but okay.
But
this is a fantasy novel. This is fantasy.
It's fantasy, but I have an attorney, long-term friend who's someone that reads my work carefully for possible slanderous or libelous sections, which I've never had an issue with. And she thought, oh no, you have a major character, which is Stephen Colbert. You've got Karen Bass as a major character, Mayor Karen Bass. And she said she started to vet the book as she read, and she was astonished that everything in the book was true and real. So the only inventions are those surrounding invented characters, but everything, you could fact check everything in this novel. Not that's what my hopes are for people to do, because it's not a polemic. It's not a political work. I'm one of those people that feel when artists begin to color their work or inform their work with the political landscape, it is the death of art. So I don't do that. But that was sort of what was thrilling for me, almost orgiastic, was the weaving of this tapestry that was so au courant that it almost defied my ability to comprehend what I had done at the end of it.
Yeah, it really, it's a wild book. It's like, it strikes me as like a piece of pure artistry. It's like very, very weird, but exuberant, and you have a vision. It's very refreshing to see, especially novelists, just be very deliberate and unapologetic. There's like a sort of muscular feel to the whole approach. So I enjoyed that a lot.
My headstone will be weird, exuberant, muscular, unapologetic.
Okay, well, I'm going to sue you then for plagiarizing my podcast.
You'll be credited.
Oh, thank you. Yes. If I can't get published anymore, I will be quoted on people's headstones. So tell. I mean, as I introduced you, you are major figure in Hollywood as a writer. You've had a long career in Hollywood. You've written many, many novels. You're a screenwriter. You're an insider. Do you still consider yourself an insider? I mean, you're sort of the insider that, you're an outsider who outsided your way into the inside, I guess.
Yeah. Insider camouflaged, I certainly was never an insider. I never was part of, I never got a salary. I never had created something that returned royalties and residuals on a regular basis. And I kind of, as you said, I outsided my way in. But I was born here. I was raised in Beverly Hills, so it's part of my DNA. That's really but always an outsider, so I had the benefit of that, like James Ellroy, his destiny was to become the writer he is, having had a mother who was murdered, My destiny was to somehow embody the corruptions of fame and riches, and to hopefully find a way out, which for me is always toward the sacred. So my books are never catalogs of darkness. There's always something in my work that tilts toward the light.
Yeah. You're not a noir. It's not noir at all. You never.
No, it's more. It's more opera for me than noir.
Well, so I want to talk about the characters in the book without giving too much away, but we should say Stephen Colbert is a character. He is pinned under a tree. The winds, the unbelievable winds that stirred up the fires have knocked over a tree. He's pinned under. We also have Karen Bass, who's the mayor of Los Angeles, in case anybody's listening who doesn't know that. Probably most people don't know that. Mayor Karen Bass, who famously was in Ghana at the time of the fires. Maybe we're just circle back to that in a little bit as to whether or not how much she should be blamed for that. Who else? We have Debra Winger is a character. We've got a character named Elizabeth Finch. Who else? Let's just
who's a real person.
Real person, yeah.
Who was famously a writer on Grey's Anatomy, and then fabricated or prevaricated about having had cancer, etc. There is a pro-Palestinian heiress, a Jewish woman named Esther, whose father is in his 80s now and a Zionist who owns a casino in Vegas, and they're completely estranged. And there is a stunt man who is Timothée Chalamet's stunt man, Steve Guttenberg, who was a real figure during the fires, and the stunt man intersect. And perhaps one of the most serious characters is the daughter of May Ringe, who was the so-called Queen of Malibu, who with her husband owned most of the land that Malibu was, and died impoverished in the first home that they had built in over on West Adams. She is a recluse and lives up in Sarah Retreat. So the difficulty always, and the exuberant part, is to come up with a small troupe of characters that are emblematic or resonate for me, whether they are characters who are famous and take a grand fall. In Colbert's case, just that. And things that illuminate my own awareness. You know, I was not a fan of Stephen Colbert, but throughout the book, I gained compassion toward him, which is what he claims to the journey he is on is that of one in love and compassion, which for me didn't quite make sense when you listen to him, you know. So the book is not just for the reader, but for the writer is a journey. And for me, it was, I'm a fire sign, right? Aries. So it's interesting for me, the fire sign writing about fire, which perhaps writing in a superheated or overheated way, but that's what I do, you know, that's what I do.
Okay, well, before we get into the book itself, I want to talk about the fires. These are the Palisades fires, mostly. You do have some reference to Altadena, to the Eaton fire in the book.
Yes.
As my audience knows, and as I told you, my house in Altadena burned down in the Eaton fire, and I've been talking about that quite a bit on the podcast, and I've written about it quite a bit. You don't have to tell everybody where you live, but do you live in the Palisades? Like, what was your actual experience with the fires in January?
No, I have someone close to me that lives there, and she was staying with a good friend who I know very well, who lives in Peru, and he happened to be one of the head of emergency operations of the Red Cross. So he was well schooled in an emergency, so I wasn't that nervous. But then came the evacuation.
You weren't that nervous, sorry, when you heard that there was a fire? Like, yeah, let's just kind of do the timeline that day.
My fear would have been that something horrific would have happened to my friend, but with him there, I didn't have that fear.
Okay.
I would say, Meghan, that my astonishment came when I toured through both those cities. You didn't need a pass for Altadena, but you needed one for the Palisades, and I had that. And, you know, what I have said and continue to say is, if one had been awakened from a coma and driven through those cities, fire would have been far down on the list of what you imagine would have happened. It would have been terrorism. It would have been a meteor, anything. There are, as you know, miles after miles after miles of leveled ground. And then the PCH is the same for about 5 miles, starting somewhere around Sunset Boulevard and ending, to put it in context for the celebrities, around Nobu.
I think that's how the fire department, organized their maps as well. So.
And I kept driving through there. I was there quite frequently, and each time there was such a strong element of unreality. I knew you would have felt the same, because you drive through ruined neighborhoods, and then you reflexively think, well, I'm getting to the downtown area. There's no way that could have been touched.
Yeah.
And then you see the downtown area is gone, So that was how my closest to the fire were also people that lost their homes in Altadena as well, friends that I knew, but far more in the Palisades,
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I've said repeatedly is I didn't live in the canyons or like the areas that you associate with burning down. It's kind of like if you buy a house up there, it's part of that. You're taking that risk. Like it's kind of a known risk. And I was living down in a more residential area. Like I was half a mile from a Rite Aid, it was that kind of thing.
Here.
It cannot happen here. And I had neighbors, who had lived there for 50 years who just finally left thinking, oh, well, nothing's going to happen, but I guess I should get out of here. And it was just unimaginable that something like that would have happened. But it sounds like in the Palisades, there were people fleeing. I mean, there was a more acute, because I remember this was January 7th, right? So I remember watching what was going on in Altadena, and I was like, oh, wow, the Palisades is in trouble. Something really bad is happening. And that's when people were abandoning their cars. Was it on Sunset or something? And was that Steve Gutenberg, moving the cars? He was, what was happening exactly? I know this is not really in the book. But.
It is. That is in the book, the abandoned cars.
Yeah, but not
the one that's not is the Waymo cars that go out of control and crash one into another. There was the warning was terrible. There were no warnings for a long period of time. In the Palisades, everyone that I know that I spoke to always had a high measure of faith. Because they've been through many, many fires.
Right.
And there was always the reservoir. There was always the ocean for the super scoopers. And there was always a strong response. There was no strong response at all. But really more than that, I write about impermanence a lot in my work, So in the end, everything is an example of that, So I really move closer toward impermanence than bureaucratic incompetence or corruption. All of those things are there, yes, but it is the natural order for there to be unnatural and indifferent and ultimately cruel responses to these kind of events.
Gosh, I'm having flashbacks to our previous conversation about your literary career and so many people's literary careers and just the impermanence of that. And, going from having, major books with major publishers and book tours and very high profile kind of rollouts to being published by smaller and smaller presses and independent presses. And then one independent press doesn't want you anymore. So you go to another one. I mean, I think so many of us have followed this trajectory. You said something profound. You probably don't remember it. And it's almost a banal phrase, but I think it really resonated. You said, you're talking about your career and writing and reading and just the world of creativity. The road narrows. The road narrows. And listening to you talk about the kind of impermanence that we live with in regard to things like fires and losing your home and losing everything, it's kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, the road narrows, but you could say that the driveway that narrows is to a palace. That is how I regard it, because all of these things that are have such importance to us, particularly when we're younger, and unfortunately, the road, as you get older, you can't see the palace. You see tenements and chaos. With the Marvel Universe, the book that was canceled, there are now 6 editions of it. The Argentinian translation just came out. There's a private edition, there's a public domain edition, there's a tabletop, a coffee table fan edition. My own publisher, Arcade, has reissued the Marvel Universe. So this road is often one that doesn't resemble what we thought was some super highway. You know what I mean? It becomes a different road. So one's perception must shift, or you find yourself out of place and out of time, and not being able to recognize the signposts that are directing you to the palace. And for me, the palace is not legacy; it is awareness. How do we keep our awareness pristine until that too is snatched away from us by, let's say, a palace guard? So for me, I am completely divorced from my work. Bruce Wagner has opinions. Bruce Wagner plays video games compulsively when he's not working. Bruce Wagner feels almost tormented by the Bruce Wagner who writes these books because they take a lot out of me, the civilian, And I have my memory of those books is not comprehensive, but I apparently have some ecstasy in writing them.
Your memory of your most recent books, or like all of your books?
I have my memory of they've sort of crashed one into the other. I mean, it's 15 novels now, and this one was unexpected for me. So in some way, it's like they're being, I'm getting a call from a sweepstakes center, which I suspect is fraudulent, saying, "Congratulations, you have just finished another novel." It's that weird for me. Of course, I remember the details, but it's almost a PTSD. I don't want to, to really I don't want to think about it too much, because I'm really severed. I'm amputated from my work at this point, and yet language is the one thing that possesses me. It's the one thing that possesses me: the sound of language, the look of letters, the sense of paragraphs and sentences, the shock of it in terms of the beauty and the violence and the ugliness that one can use, like musical notes. That's when I say the road narrows. It's that, until all of the letters will slip off the page, and the book that you are when you vanish has no writing on it at all, But what a lovely thing it's been for me to have discovered that the words themselves are my blood flow, my musculature, my sinews, my bones, my scent. I think every writer has a scent. And I've often called it, your work are the royal garments, and when you vanish, people will pick your books up, and if people are reading at all, and they will have a sense of smell, and they will be able to catch your scent,
How would you describe your scent?
I would say it's Margiela, right? Martin Margiela, and burnt houses.
Your scent, not just the scent of this book, but your scent. It's always been burnt houses. So the world has caught up with you finally.
My work is that of the narrow and burning road to the palace. But the scent is, it's difficult to describe. One can't be aware of one's own scent as a writer.
Yeah, you never can smell yourself. That's true. It's right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you feel that you have had the freedom to experiment in this way because you're not sort of writing for the mainstream insofar as you ever did? But I think I said this to you before. I mean, my memory of your work, in the 90s, it was an event when a Bruce Wagner novel came out. The Cell Phone trilogy was obviously huge. And I imagine there being a sort of pressure to perform or just worried about public reaction in a way that maybe you don't have now. And how much of that is due to age and how much of that is due to the fact that you are being published by smaller presses? I mean, the stakes for all of us have changed pretty radically.
When you say worried about the reaction, do you mean to the work itself, or that it won't be?
I don't know. I guess I mean even things like selling a lot of copies, or reviews, or what your agent's going to think, Meghan, or how your people are going to respond.
No, I've never considered what anyone is going to think, ever. And my books have really never sold many copies.
Is that true? Have you been on a bestseller list?
Yes, but that, as we all know, that's a fantasy. Because you can have a book party in Los Angeles and sell 300 copies, and you're number 1 or 2 or 3 on the LA Times. It's all a construct. And the New York Times is that their list is not legitimate either. You can sell far more copies than the book that is number 1. And so it's all a construct. In other words, it's a fantasy of a superhighway. Yes, I used to write for the New Yorker. I wrote for the New York Times even, and my books were reviewed in the Times. Michi Kakutani reviewed 7 or 8 of my books, so I would be reviewed twice during the weekend on Sunday. But it's all a construct to me. So now I'm writing for Arcade, and Arcade is publishing William Vollmann's 3,000-page epic next year, 4 hardbacks released at once. So you have someone as lauded and esteemed as Vollmann, who was canceled by his press, too difficult, to this, to that. And we're publishing him. We just published David Mamet's novel. So it's the company you keep is important, and often it isn't important as well. So if I had not had this publisher who makes these beautiful editions of my books, what would I be doing? I would be publishing them online, and I would probably have less incentive because I'm old and traditional. So part of me reflexively goes to having a book.
Yeah.
a book in one's hand. So yes, seasons come and go. Fashionable writers become unfashionable. Celebrated writers become obscure and forgotten. Obscure and forgotten writers become celebrated. It's a roundelay, it's a kind of glorious shit show, you know what I mean? But if you focus too much on where am I in all of this, what is going to happen to me, you're doomed,
Yeah, I mean, I see so many writers of all ages, but it's especially noticeable in kind of the middle-aged, mid-list set, just desperately trying to promote and do Instagram reels, and like this idea that if you're not out there on social media promoting your book, what's the point of writing the book? You're self-sabotaging. Why are you doing this to yourself? You owe it to yourself and to the publisher and to your reader to get the word out there. And it makes me really sad, actually, to see it. On the other hand, I should probably be doing more of it. So perhaps that's cope on my part, as they say.
Yeah. I don't know. Part of me doesn't care anymore, and I don't say that to be sort of defiant or reveling in this idea of myself as someone who is past all that. I just my work seems to be sought out or found by certain adepts. There is not a thing I can do that will encourage people to read my books. So what's fun for me is when young people, I'm approached sometime on the street by a 20-year-old, and there'll be an essay about me somewhere by people in their late 20s or early 30s. That's fun. But this idea, it's a cemetery in terms of my work. I'm still living in one of the mausoleums, and I adore this place of the dead, But this idea of that place of the dead becoming a kind of circus ground, or a place where the L.A. Times Book Fair will hold its yearly event, it's ghoulishly absurd to me. You know what I mean? It's just not. It's not what I do. The more simple my books are, the books that I consider to be the more simple books are often called extremely dense. I have no, all I have a sense of is I want my adoration of language to come through to the reader, and the just not just word play, but the sacred dance of words and what one does with them on the page. For me, it's always a collision of the sacred and the profane, the pornographic and the virginal, the infamously unknown and the infamously famous. These are I'm always colliding poles. But for me, I've had to Meghan, long since step out of the way of any idea of my work becoming a sensation, So, but I get it. Every writer, is in a different time in their journey. And, I even with Marvel Universe, which wasn't that long ago, I was told you can't put this online.
Yeah, we should say you put it in the public domain, right?
I put it in the public domain.
Remind
I was going to, when it was canceled, I thought, well, I want a book. And they said, you've got to go to a boutique publisher. I've been around long enough to know what that meant.
Yeah, what does that mean?
It means you'll never publish it, or you'll find someone that will, and it will be 18 months. and the energy that it would take to chase someone, even if you had a fan there, is nightmarish to me. So I thought, well, I'll publish this book myself. And I got into that, and it's like, well, you have to order the paper from China. I thought, oh, is that what I am now? This writer that is now a publisher.
Yes,
no.
Well, we all are.
So I just said, fuck the world. I'm not going to sell this for $1.99 and have a website. No, I had to create a website, the first one that I had, only to disseminate the work. So it's available to this day to anyone. And even the people in Argentina called me because everyone wants like my blessing. Like, do we have your permission? I said, it's in, Senor, it's in the public domain, so you do what you like, which is a lovely thing for me. It was, I felt very much unburdened. And, so then Roar came next, and Roar had great interest on the East Coast, one of the big publishing houses that knew my work. And then when they learned, the higher-ups learned that the protagonist was a 60-something man who was biracial and had just had a gender surgery without knowing anything more. It was like, no, I'm a 71-year-old white man and a Jew. How could I be writing?
Well, you should just say you were those things too. Like, I'm getting to that, and then it would have been completely different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
this is what your advance is going to pay for this reassignment surgery. Okay, wow, really? So that
was it. And then Andrew Wiley, my agent, got me to Tony Lyons, which was the last house on the block. And I'm kind of a consigliere now, an editorial consigliere at Arcade.
Okay.
Arcade, is the legendary publishing house that Tony bought some years ago when it fell into bankruptcy. Started by Richard Seaver and his wife Jeanette. Seaver was the man that essentially introduced Beckett to America, and then worked for Grove. We kind of rearranged the mission statement to get it closer to what Arcade initially was. And that's why we are now publishing not just Volman and Mamet, but so many new millennial writers that are just exceptional, So life does take some strange turns, but I'm interested in this epilogue that's unfolding for me, before they lock the mausoleum door.
Well, let's talk about the book itself without giving too much away. Stephen Colbert's pinned under a tree. He is hallucinating. What, he's there for 3 days or something? How many days does he end up being there? Like a while.
2.5 days.
Yeah.
He's Stephen Colbert, the real Stephen Colbert, is the Lord of the Rings freak. And, actually, one of the things when I was writing this book, he has savaged Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr., on his show endlessly. And I saw, good Lord, the parallels between these two men. They should be brothers. They both had these enormous Catholic families, like 16 siblings. Both of their parents died violently. Stephen Colbert's father died in a plane crash with his brothers, his older brothers. They both have had substance issues. Colbert has talked about that. So that was part of the compassion, that you have a shadow. We all have shadows. So he is in the book is coming to accept some Catholic, high Catholic honor, which he is kind of prone to do. And he's staying at Maria Shriver's house. She happens to be at the Vatican visiting the Pope. And he is staying at her house when he's about to leave. He's about to evacuate himself and move downtown to a hotel there when a tree topples over and pins him. And part of the hallucination he has is that he is on his way to retrieve the ring, but it becomes commingled in his head with his father's wedding ring. So it's complicated, that, but it's probably the most lyrical part of the novel in a way. And then I can give a spoiler alert. I don't care if we give stuff away, honestly.
Okay.
So you can feel free.
I mean, you gave away your whole book for free to everybody. So, well, I don't want to. I mean, okay. Well, what was your spoiler alert you were going to say? Because I want to ask about a couple other people.
I'm going. The book is. I'm hoping that you found humor in it.
Oh my God, yeah. Because I was going to say the most lyrical part to me were the Nextdoor contributors. So, I mean, back to what you were saying a little bit ago, this juxtaposition of high, low, and you've got celebrities on one hand, and then you've got these yahoos barking at each other on the Nextdoor app has got to be the worst of all. I mean, I don't know if you would rank terrible. I guess there's Citizen, Nextdoor. So they're sniping at each other about everything. That was wonderful. Karen Bass. I don't know if I have more. I don't know if it humanized her or.
I don't think it's possible to humanize her. And I don't say that in a snarky way, honestly, Meghan. I started to look into Karen Bass, and there is no person there.
That's what I think, but then I feel terrible about it. Like every time I get off the plane at LAX and you're going down to the baggage and it's a big photo of Karen Bass and she's welcoming you to the city. I feel like I'm looking at a piece of cardboard.
Yeah, she is like a neutered AI creation. It's like your next prompt would have been AI, spice it up a little bit, but AI flatline with her. And I looked her up. And it's very confusing, her past.
Yes.
We know that she was in the running to be Biden's vice president. And then some things were revealed about her history in Cuba. And Kamala Harris stepped into the breach. She had a daughter who tragically died in a car crash. With her husband. She has daughters that she shares, children that she shares with her ex-husband. And I looked up her ex-husband. Now, this is the mayor of Los Angeles. And you find a blurry picture of him. It says that he is no longer living. And there is no information available at all. So I'm not saying this in a conspiratorial way, but then you read conflicting interviews with she and her children. They say that she was their mother's midwife, the woman after their divorce, and that she had an obligation to these children. They were not her biological children.
They were never, but I always assumed Karen Bass was gay. Not.
Listen, it's all. I'm telling you, it is all a construct, and some of that I approach a little bit in the book. But what interests me most is be gay. Then it's not as if that would harm the cause. It would help her. In Los Angeles, but she is so bloodless that I thought. This is an interesting and challenging character for me, and I feel that I did treat her humanely, and she is at the end. The book is divided into two sections: who by fire, who by water. And in the end, Karen Bass, and she's eviscerated on Nextdoor for this. Gets baptized, as if that will solve it all. And symbolically, it does in a sense, it takes care narratively of a lot of things for me too, in terms of the themes of the book. So fire and water. But yes, I really wanted the book to be funny as well, and I've been heartened that some of my friends just thought it was hilarious. Now, those friends are Todd Solondz and Brett Ellis, so
I think that's a pretty decent cross section of the American reading public. Okay, but all right. I do want to ask you your opinion about Los Angeles politics vis-a-vis the fire, if you have any opinions. But I just think we should, for the sake of talking about the book, we should say, so Karen is in Ghana, obviously, when the fires are happening. Yeah. And I don't know if was she really sort of like aware that there was there was a pretty good chance that something like this might happen, and she went to Ghana anyway? Like, how much should we blame her for not being around?
Well, it's not just that she went to Ghana. It's that they had hired a woman that was in Puerto Rico supervising the devastation there, and the woman had essentially was not qualified, and to this day she's still in her position here. She gets, I think, $750,000 a year. I think security for her is probably $1 million. So it wasn't just that she was in absentia. That became symbolic of a general disregard and indifference to what was happening. This idea that, all of this is, as I said, it does become political, and so it doesn't have much interest for me. But yeah. She had made a vow that she would never leave the country, and she did, because it was the inauguration of Ghana's first female vice president. So it was a kind of echo of Kamala, homage, and she likes to say that I was asked by President Biden, as if that is the be all and the end all. You must then leave during a treacherous moment in the city. But whether she was here or not is not relevant to me. It all would have happened. Half of the fire trucks were gone. There was no water in the reservoir. There was no response. You can still see video of her literally walking down the street of downtown Palisades, and the fires are raging behind her, and they are not being put out. It was just let it burn.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's what it was like in
yeah. Well, and you make reference to that famous Let Malibu Burn piece, right?
Yeah.
Was it in Harper's by Mike Davis?
Mike Davis, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Everyone kind of was falling back on that for a minute, the intellectual class of Los Angeles.
Yeah, but I wrote this book. It was another novel for me. And when I write a novel, I have to absolutely fall in love with the collection of characters that knock me down, and begin to pummel me. It was not politics. But then you look in the wake of it, since January, there is one permit in Malibu that has been, they've given one building permit. And they will say there's actually two, but the one was in process before the fires.
Okay. I think that's an important distinction, because this is another thing I don't understand, because I keep hearing things like one permit issued in Palisades, zero in Altadena, but I see houses going up.
No. It's one in Malibu.
Oh, Malibu. Okay.
Malibu. Palisades, there's still not anywhere near what there should be, but there are houses going up in the Palisades. But again, it's I don't want to do the book a disservice by that it was a kind of retort or response that whose aim indirectly or directly is to alter procedures or response to such events. It was, as you said so beautifully, I thank you for it. It is a pure rage of art, amputation, and that the title really came from something I heard before I started writing the book. Someone in Pasadena or Altadena said that it was as if two cities had been amputated from the county of L.A. And then, of course, an amputation comes in later. This 95-year-old woman who's burned, living in, the trailer park that burned, one of two in Malibu. And she literally has a 4th-degree burn, which means when bone is burned, but she survives that. And they're going to amputate this 93-year-old woman. One of the most comic sequences in the book.
Yeah. Well, also we have we haven't even touched on this, but we have the Pacific Palestiners, as you call them. Do you want to tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, and I'll give something away because it's fine. Okay. The Pacific Palestiners it's Esther, who owns a bakery. She's the heir to an enormous fortune, hundreds of millions of dollars that she gives to Hamas. And she's been to Dubai, and she's in all the marches. And her father is this Zionist who loves to go to the deli here in L.A. but lives in Vegas. And he's destroyed by what he considers her betrayal, right? So she's great friends with Debra Winger, who is an activist for the liberation, so-called, of Palestine. And he goes to his daughter, Esther, dies in the fire, along with some looters that were in the house with her. And there's a memorial that Esther's father finds out to celebrate her life after the remains of her body are found in the house in the Palisades. And he goes to this memorial. And the memorial's hosted by Angeleno Jolie, I think, and Debra Winger. And you have the actors and actresses in Hollywood that are against the so-called Israeli genocide, etc. So he shows up, and Debra Winger, being a good friend of Esther, knows that the two have been at odds, and that it's not, the relationship has been awful and was in shambles at the time of her death. And he is very delighted and smiling. And Debra Winger's heart goes out to him, and she thanks him for coming to the memorial. And she knows how difficult the relationship was. And he said, I have a gift for you, And he gives her a little box. And she's, again, taken aback, touched, moved that this man who has the Zionist views that he has, she thinks at the end of his life, perhaps, and she's going to treat him with great civility because she's genuinely surprised and impressed that he's there. She opens the box, and she doesn't know really what she's looking at after she unwraps them. And essentially, what she's looking at are, the father was given by the coroner the jawbone and teeth of his daughter. That was just about the only thing left. And he gives it to Debra Winger, And so, that was one thing in the book that, it has resonance because of the Jews that were incinerated,
right,
etc.
Right.
So for him, it has resonance. But it's things like that. Like, I did not know that was going to happen when I began the book at all. So there's things that for writers, for this writer anyway, that that sort of are disarming and startling. And I found that to be a high comic grand guignol moment in the book, and so that was something that happens in the book that that won't take away from the lyricism of the book.
No.
So I don't give it. It's like fuck it. You know what I mean?
No, I thought it was perfect. Like tonally, I thought it was very. You always have total control. Like as when we read your work, it's like we're never worried. Like you are a pro. Like we're just along for the ride with you. I mean, we're going to wrap up pretty soon, but I have to ask, do you know Debra Winger? Do you know Stephen Colbert? Like, did you send them a copy of the book? What if you run into them in Erewhon or something?
No, I don't know them. And, I wrote an entire book about Michael Douglas after he got his throat cancer. I mean, I don't abuse these people in my mind. The worst one could say is that about the Debra Winger is that she's misrepresented, or she's parodied, or, but my work is not about that. I didn't set out to pillory Debra Winger or Stephen Colbert. I doubt, the book is very intimate in terms of Stephen Colbert. His wife is in it, his family, the story of how he met his wife. So I developed a kind of closeness to him, but I've never had an issue, Meghan, ever. I mean, one time, David Geffen came up to me at a party and said, why did you treat our friend Arnie Klein that way? This was in I'm Losing You, where Arnie Klein was a famous dermatologist in Beverly Hills and a kind of Sherlock Holmes, very flamboyant, a Sherlock Holmes in terms of being a clinical diagnostician, right? And I had used elements of Colbert, of Arnie Klein.
Mm-hmm.
But he said Neil Simon is very upset. This is a long time ago. But I've never. It's kind of the contrary. It's like I found the reverse of that, where people want to be in a book that
exactly. I know.
Yeah. So
Well, before we go, I do want to ask you, and I know that you're speaking as a novelist, as an artist, you're not going to opine about politics or certainly local politics, but how do you feel the city of LA is doing these days? You're native, you grew up here, you know it very well. How do you feel about the state of things?
Well, I think you only know by what you see, and there is not really a store that I go past or a gas station that doesn't have a psychotic, potentially violent person making their home there. And people dodge them, or people smile and say hello to them, thinking that will neutralize anything terrible that might happen. And then you see the encampments. What you see is kind of what you get, So the city is troublesome, and it's not what it once was. I don't say that out of nostalgia. I just say that as a pragmatic observer, and the violence, American violence, is not exclusive to this city. Neither is American madness. It's viral now. It's it's beyond trending. It is the platform itself. So will we get through this time? What Charlie Sheen called the unflushed toilet of the time we're in. Yes, we will. America is durable. But I think probably I write these books as almost a kind of, I don't know if inoculation is the word, but by confronting the worst of humanity and the best of who we are is a great coping mechanism. It's like, keeping the lawn mowed at that cemetery I'm talking about. You know what I mean? So that's how I do it. Like you clear brush around houses, I clear brush around the mausoleum.
Would you ever live anywhere but Los Angeles?
Probably. I'm overwhelmed in terms of where, language always took precedence for me. So I didn't listen. I stopped listening to music. I can't speak another, well, not completely, but I stopped becoming enthralled.
No, I've been writing about this so much. I can't listen to music anymore because it makes me too sad. And I have a whole piece about this in my latest book. And I almost didn't include it in the book because I thought this is so messed up and everyone's going to think this is like beyond sad, and everybody related to it.
Oh, how nice.
As you get older, there is something about your relationship to music, I find, that is intolerably emotional.
Well, yeah, I hear you on that one for sure. For me, it's more that the divine cancer of words edged everything out. If you're in chemo with words, you can't listen to music or see movies or learn how to speak French, Spanish, or Italian. So for me, that's what happened. The narrowing of the road is the road is paved only with language for me now. But you had said something.
Oh, I was asking. Sorry, we got derailed. I was asking if you would ever live anywhere but Los Angeles.
Yes. In that same way, there are too many places. So I would go back to a place that I was infatuated as a child, and it would be Palm Springs. Mm-hmm. That's where I would live, because anything else is, explore Nashville. I love Nashville, but I don't think so. Texas, Wyoming, what to do. So for me, the backyard would be Palm Springs because it's the first place I ran away when I was a boy. I took a Greyhound bus there at 12 years old or something like that. And there is something mystical about Palm Springs for me. So that's where I would go.
Interesting. I think there's something mystical about Los Angeles for me. I think it's so hard to live here and I can't get away. Like I have more to do in New York. I have more business in New York. I probably have more friends in a way, but I can't tear myself away from here.
A great mystic that I knew once compared it to the Valley of Mexico. There is something mystical that reminded him of the Valley of Mexico here in the Valley of Los Angeles. So it makes sense. And the people that wound up here, Leonard Cohen, had a multitude of places he could have gone. Mm-hmm. Carlos Castaneda, it's just it's unusual, and and our relationship becomes complicated to this place, which is more or less my place of origin. You have a great love affair, and that also includes, I guess, domestic violence.
Yes. Codependence, symbiotic abuse, whatever. Yes. Yeah. Well, it's a real relationship. So it's an adult relationship. Well, Bruce, thank you as always. Congratulations on this novel. It's wonderful and weird and everything we expect from you. So I'm Meghan, glad that you wrote it.
Thank you for having me and for being someone that has had a long time interest. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for everything, and hopefully we'll talk again.
I hope so.
That was my interview with novelist Bruce Wagner. We're talking about Amputation. I'm holding it up. This is the advanced reader's copy. If you're watching on YouTube, the real version is even more beautiful. It's called Amputation. It's about the Los Angeles wildfires. Bruce is the author of many, many novels, including The Chrysanthemum Palace, which was a finalist for the PEN/Faulkner Award. I forgot to mention that in the introduction. What else do you need to know? The Unspeakeasy. We are about to announce our 2026 offerings. That includes our retreats, and that is going to include a writing retreat, just for writing, not necessarily for discussing dangerous ideas, although we can also do that. And we're also going to have a big co-ed 2-night, 3-day retreat next fall. On the heels of our New York City weekend co-ed retreat. We're going to up the ante. We're also going to have a women's retreat in Los Angeles in the spring, and a couple more in upstate New York, in the Catskills and the Hudson Valley. So stay tuned. Go to theunspeakeasy.com to get on the mailing list, and I will be talking more about that in the coming weeks. I'm also going to be teaching a Zoom writing course early next year. So stay tuned. In the meantime, I will be back next week with another super nuanced guest. Thanks for listening. See you then.